Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of April, and welcome to Pep Talks in the Morning. I am your host, Felicia Holder, also the chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party. And joining me on the panel this morning, we have Tahira Mahadio, who is the Pep Youth Arm Central Hub Chair. Good morning, Tahira.
Morning.
And joining me as well is a return guest, Michelle Davis from our PEP mobilization team. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Felicia. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Right. So this morning we have a very, I would say, question-filled episode of Pep Talks in the morning, because a lot of what we have to discuss leads us to even more questions than answers. And for those who may have heard, if you listened to the press briefing, if you read up on it after, if you listened to the follow-up stories as reported on the various news stations last night, the Ministry of Education has formally announced that schools will not reopen on April 20th as previously outlined. However, they will be now, or they may, the word may in inverted commas, or tentatively reopen come September. Now, this announcement, which still has a lot of uncertainty surrounding it, because they actually are having a follow-up discussion with the stakeholders in both the region as well as here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the education board. What exactly are we going to do with the education model come September, or should this have to go on further than that? Now, for us here in Trinidad and Tobago who have and we follow the Caribbean CSEC model, which would see students at 10, 11, 12 years old writing an SCA exam, which would then place them into secondary schools, raises a lot of concern for students, parents, and teachers alike. And this morning, we are going to do a discussion on that topic of education. We have mostly left that alone because we are very much understanding that this situation with education is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, it's not unique to the region, it's actually global, where schools in England, Germany, Wales, etc. are experiencing the same thing, where they can't reopen because the world, at least 30-40% of the world, is under a COVID-19 lockdown. The difference, however, is that we here in Trinidad and many of us in the region share that CSEC examination component, which we are already seeing is saying undue stress on children and parents. So at this point, I want to bring Michelle and Tahira into the conversation. Tahira is here as a member of the youth arm, as well as someone who we think can bring a nice youthful perspective to this entire issue. Yes, she's not in the CSEC level, but she would be on the ground and connected to many students who would be experiencing the anxiety that is surrounding this issue. So, Michelle, to jump, the ministry this announcement yesterday, like I said, they are supposed to follow up on new information tomorrow. But what are your first thoughts surrounding this possible tentative reopening of schools in September?
Well, as you indicated, there are so many questions to be asked with regards to this. But I mean, number one comes to mind is the local exam. And as to the impact of our students and how is this going to play out, should the schools reopen in September? So the minister has indicated they need a month to prepare for the exam. So tentatively, the exam would be in October. And however, seeing we are facing a global, a pandemic that has not been heard of in terms of our generation, we have so many factors to consider of how are the students going to cope with readjusting going back to school. What is going on with the students now? Are there mandatory classes online? Is it up to the parents to continue with the syllabus? Again, so many questions. So many children in Trinidad and Tobago do not have access to a laptop or to internet. So we saw yesterday the ministry has indicated there is a online access for resources and materials. But again, it is assumed the students have the necessary tools to access this. So again, I'm concerned with just the welfare of the students that are about to take this exam. And you know, how are we going to handle this? There is a psychological part of this whole COVID-19 that nobody has discussed in terms of the students.
Exactly. Tahira?
I agree with Michelle, but yeah, I agree with what she's saying and everything. And to think about the Form 1 system being rushed, because if they're writing a CA in a term one, the term what the term gonna start next year, the January, the Form 1 system gonna be rushed, and that was gonna put like obviously the pressure gonna be on the secondary school students more than the work itself. It's going to be on the secondary students compared to the SCA students.
I think what is one of the many concerns that I have is we obviously lost term 3, which would have been the term that was continuing after Easter. We lost the SCA component, and we haven't even touched on CXA yet, because the SCA one, I think, is the most concerning for many people, because for those who don't understand this child abusing SCA exam, as we often refer to it in the Progressive Empowerment Party, this is the examination that literally determines whether you're going to be a lawyer for some people, or in a restaurant, sorry, behind a cash register. And not that there's any distinction in terms of one being better or worse than the other, but for many people who aspire to be high in the professional field, who aspire to rise in the ranks of doctors and lawyers and engineers, etc., for them it begins as early as 10 years old. And this education which places you in a school that determines the rest of your life. So you're going to QRC versus Mokorapo, a pressure on students. And I think what is most concerning to me is that we're in schools in September, full examinations in October, to take a month to correct these examinations, and then take a month to actually place these students. What is most concerning to me is, what are we going to be teaching in that September to October period that is going to allow these pupils to sit an examination? Is the ministry looking or thinking reflecting the school curriculum? That is like, I'm listening I don't usually listen to these press releases and these media briefings held by the ministry, but this one in particular is concerning to me, because, like I said, it is literally the future of the nation's children that we are discussing. Because unlike Scandinavian and Norwegian schools, we are not allowing children to progress naturally progress naturally through a school system that will allow them to sit a real examination at the age of 16, 17. At 10 and 11 and 12 years old, we are telling them, like I said earlier, this is the examination that is going to determine the rest of your lives. Mm-hmm. Seeing as we have lost so much time because of COVID-19, Michelle raised the issue, are these classes online mandatory or are they elective? Because I can tell you for certain, I know that there are people within my community who are not doing these online classes. Does that place them at a disadvantage when school does reopen in September? What exactly is going to be taught that would allow all of these students to compete equitably?
It's very concerning and should be concerning to everyone in the country, because what these students are enduring, at home right now. Again, our parents disciplining in terms of the education system, in terms of taking a few hours a day to really sit with their kids and follow the syllabus, or what's going on? And I haven't seen anything in writing, Felicia, in terms of what's really should be going on in the past month with the parents. I see it from the US that it is mandatory. The parents have been given a syllabus, and the parents have been given an outline to follow the syllabus. But I have not seen anything, so correct me if I'm wrong. But again, the stress that the kids are under, the uncertainty the kids are under, and again, by this abusing CEA,
Yeah.
C exam
Response
pending.
to the class system. The SEA is just
Correct.
like a class system. Whatever, hopefully say just reference to going to a prep school compared to a senior sec. They're going in there thinking, okay, I go into work in a restaurant or something. Okay, jobs nowadays now in Trinidad is very scarce. You
Yes.
take what you get, and some of them, I'm gonna be honest with you, you're going to realize that at the end of the day, it's not what kind of work you end up in. It is showing you the kind of person you is. You could end up in a work in KFC or in the bank, and you could leave the work in the bank in 2 or 3 months because you just don't want to work. People who work in a restaurant, they work for months and years. Okay, that will show you your ambition, and that's where your true potential is. Your potential don't lie in an exam, and this SCA exam is,
Yeah.
is something that it is really a class system. And right now, in the nature of things, this whole idea about abolishing SCA should come to talk right now in the government, because we
And I
Agreed,
we
love that you
100%.
we in a perfect
I love that you
situation
brought
for
that
it.
in. I love that you brought that into the conversation to hear, because that is definitely part of the discussion. Like I said earlier, the Progressive Empowerment Party views the exam as a child abusing exam and definitely thinks that it needs to be abolished. I spent all of last night reading up on the Norwegian and the Scandinavian models of education, and what they focus on and what we are focused on implementing is a lot of critical thinking. And when you look at these examinations, I also went up on the CXC um, examination board, and I was reading up on the nature of the examinations that you have to sit under CSEC. And most of it is rote and repetition. You're learning and you're cramming knowledge into your head that you are unable to take outside into the real and critical thinking world. And we see it today. We have, Michelle, what's that term you use? Functional illiterate people walking around who have a
Yes.
lot of books and lacking very little in terms of common sense. And the world has changed in such a way that repetition and things that you learn by rote is no longer acceptable. And I say it's no longer acceptable because technology has come into the mix and changed the way that we're doing things. There's less focus on competing on a personal level, which is what's with CXC, not CXC, which is what the SCA encourages children to do. They compete on personal levels. They want to be better than their peers. They want to be able to pass for the top choice. They don't want to pass for their last choice. And if you pass for this school, you're considered Duncy head, and your parents are tell was asked. So I'm competing on a critical and project thinking. You're no longer working on a repetition level. You're working on projects and in groups of people that you may never work with before. And these are the critical thinking and learning skills that we're not going to. And so that point that Tahira raised and Michelle backed up about abolishing SCA. And I have to thank Lima McLeod Wilkinson, who did contribute to this conversation yesterday. It's a point and a topic that she's very passionate about, the education system here in Trinidad and Tobago. But I have to agree with everything that all of you are saying, because this is now the perfect opportunity for us to really relook and rethink this SCA examination system. The pressure that we're putting on these children in the midst of COVID-19, how much worse is that going to be come September? How much worse is it going to be for the students who know that they had the disadvantage? They didn't have a laptop at home. I saw somebody say yesterday, and it had to be a PNM supporter, plain talk bad manners, if you don't have a laptop, use your parents' phone. And I'm thinking, what you don't want for your own self and your own children? Why are you insisting that the people who have access to much less than you, why are you insisting that they subject themselves to that? What about equity? What about giving all children a level playing field? Come September, what kind of pressure are we putting on these students who are already under a lot of pressure and mental health issues concerning SEA? What are we telling them in terms of their future? Because, like I say, this is an examination that for many children determines their future.
Felicia, the system is set up to fail, and the terminology I use is deliberate incompetency. And in this case, it is a deliberate system that is basically going to fail the citizens, the youthful citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It does not take into account that students learn and comprehend at different levels and at different rates. It doesn't mean that one test should determine your future. We have billionaires that have admitted they basically, struggled passing grade school, but that did not hamper them. What is lacking in our system, as you indicated, is that it's a memorization, and it's just basically pass a test. And that's why we are experiencing what we are experiencing in Trinidad, because everyone passed the test, so called, and they don't know how to apply anything. It's not challenging them think wise. It's not challenging everyone's aptitude. It's basically saying this C exam is your life or death and your future. And as Tahira indicated, it's almost class based to me. It appears class based because if you don't have access to the tools and the appropriate levels of what is needed, you are going to fail this test. You are going to fail in the system, and then you become lost. So, I mean, it's so much. Being educated away, and I now see how much advantages I had. That allowed me to enhance my critical thinking, allowed me to objectively view things. And it shows the downfall of our education system, how antiquated our education system continues to be.
Exactly. There's also the aspect that I just mentioned and brought up, but it is very real when you consider the situation that we are facing right now. These are undoubtedly difficult times for us, and the SE exam has been known to create a lot of stress and pressure and mental health illnesses for students. Is this something that we can expect to be on the rise? And is this something that the ministry, and again, raising more questions than answers, is this something that the ministry is preparing itself to deal with? The mental strain and the mental stress that this is about to put on the lives of students who are going to face the pressure of returning in a school term and being told that you have to sit an examination within a month of being back in school. What is being put in place for the students who are obviously going to experience some kind of mental breakdown? Suicide is a question that we have to think about. Nobody wants to think about a 10, 11, 12-year-old committing suicide, but research has shown that at that age, your emotions are not as advanced as somebody who has learned to manage and control their emotions. And the fear that surrounds this examination could put a possible strain and added pressure on students. Is the ministry going to look at that pressure that we are about to press onto these children with regards to still forcing them into this examination? I can't believe, Michelle, to be really honest, and to hear, I can't believe that in the nearly a month and a half, or what is it, a month? This week would be a month exactly
Right.
that we're home from COVID. I can't believe that there has been no talks surrounding no SE this year. And I mean, exactly what we're saying. The exam itself is enough pressure. The exam, when you're not studying for it in a classroom, is additional pressure. The exam, when you're not studying under the pressure of COVID, knowing that you don't have access to the same curriculum if you are not a child of a wealthy class, is even more pressure. Is the ministry going to put something in place? Are they going to put counselors, guidance people? Are they having teachers reach out to students and principals? Is the Board of Education in the do we have Board of Education right now? Because it doesn't seem like we do. Are they reaching out to the principals and teachers and schools to check up and find out what is going on with these children?
I mean, I haven't read it anywhere. I haven't seen any proactive behavior on behalf of the Ministry of Education. It is almost an assumption. Okay, the kids have been home for a month now, and I don't know what the ministry is assuming. Are they assuming the parents are being proactive? And that you cannot assume. There is, as you indicated, Felicia, there is there's a psychological aspect of this that what about kids in abused homes? They're now been home for a month, and suppose they are the ones that are to take this exam. What about kids that are suffering from hunger right now because mommy and daddy are currently unemployed? Do you really think that they are really studying right now? Is that the priority now? No, it would not be. There are so many elements that will impact this student's performance in this antiquated exam. Why are we not considering the fact of just eliminating it and trying to go forward? Had we been on a GPA system, we would have been able to kind of assess where each student lies and go from there. But we're not. We're at a system that is basically one test, do or die, and there are so many elements to consider. When they go back in September, what is going to be done in the month? Are they going to cram down all the material, which you and I know each student has a different learning capability. So that's not fair to do that, right? So what are we doing? Like you said, it's more questions than answers concerning the Ministry of Education that continues to manage our education system from a very antiquated point of view.
Tomorrow when I hear and I listen up to this conference, I also want to hear what they have planned for the students who would be or would have been or should be moving into the standard 5 classes, because that would now be our standard 4 students, in terms of they will no longer have a 3-term system. This 2-term system that they are going to implement. I hope, for God's sakes, I really hope that they're not going to cram 3 terms into 2. And again, the people who are in charge and responsible for this and for educating the young minds of Trinidad and Tobago, I really hope that they're putting some kind of plan in place to revise the curriculum for these students, to revise even the SCA model. Because, I mean, this is the perfect time. We're talking about not reopening schools until September. That means we had March, April, May, June, July, August, about 6 months to actually try to roll out a new system, to try and roll out a new model. I'm talking about marking children based on SBAs. I know for me, back in school, when I did SBA, and if I did poorly, and the first thing that you were looking out for was to make up for it in terms of examinations. That is no longer, or may no longer be, an option for students. Again, adding additional pressure to them, knowing that if I did terribly on my SCA, chances are if I'm being marked in it, I'm not going to make up for it in terms of the examination that I would have set. But back to my standard 4 students, what are they going to be subjected to in this new and revised school term? Are they going to cram all of this information into 2 terms, or are they going to readjust the education model, the curriculum, so that they are able to sit an examination based on the amount of information that you can learn in this time? Because let's face it, you're already forcing children to regurgitate and repeat what they're learning. We're not teaching them any real critical thought or skill. We can't expect to force 3 terms of work into 2 terms. And I'm really hoping, like I say, that there's somebody somewhere in the education ministry. I'm not expecting it from that dinosaur, but I'm hoping that there's somebody in that education board or tutor, whoever, that is going to consider that subjecting children to the same amount of work in a short amount of time is not going to reflect positively on them in terms of their well-being, their mental well-being, and it is obviously not going to reflect on their ability to sit and pass with flying colors an examination that is based on repetition.
It's certainly not, and that is what I'm not sure why they're not considering it. Because, like you said, and indicating that they have 6 months, give or take, to possibly review and revise. But again, what it really shows, Felicia, and it really shows the reactiveness of our governance, because these are items that we should have been discussing long time ago. These are items that we should have been revisiting and constantly revisiting this exam, this prehistoric exam that is abusing these 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds. We should have been taking into consideration, this is not where the world is trending in terms of education. This is not what first world education systems are doing. We are failing. We know we have a high illiteracy problem in Trinidad, which I always bring up. We have a functionally illiterate, population, a high percentage too. And it shows the system has failed. It shows the system continues to fail the citizens, continues to fail the students. And it is not conducive or progressive to what we need in terms to continue to manage our country, manage businesses, and so forth. We should have been reviewing our education system a long time ago.
And definitely phasing it out. Perfect opportunity. There's also there's the added strain right now, and I know a lot of single parent households are going to feel this. They're going to feel it pinch the most, because there's also the financial strain of
With the
sending your
unemployment.
kids to school. And Tahira, jump in here, because I know this was an issue that you and Natalia were discussing in the youth. Let's face it, unemployment is on the rise right now. There are many people who are at home, particularly our single parent households who only want one source of income. You have children, and now you have to study the fact that you are either laid off and still waiting on $100 grant
The grant.
from the still waiting on your $1,500 grant, still waiting on your food card. By the way, I heard that less than 20% of some constituencies received food cards, and of that 20%, still unsure. There's no way to tell if the people who actually needed the food cards actually got it, like those single parent households. And then there's school to consider. And school is coming up. If we're talking about reopening and starting a new school term in January, this is after Christmas. This is after people would have spent money. This is after a period of uncertainty, because we still have no idea what is really going to be happening in the world right now with regards to COVID. There's a lot of uncertainty. The time keeps extending. We keep hearing that we may be under quarantine for even longer than we anticipated. We don't know what is really happening. And again, is this something that the Ministry of Education is going to consider? School books are, back in my day, school books were expensive. I remember getting $1,000 grant for school books, and this was back in the day, back in early 2000s. And books were still extremely expensive then. I'm not sure if they still have those grants going on, or if they're mandatory books, or some books that are given to the schools and loaned to the pupils. But I know that parents still have to fork out a lot of money on their own to pay for these books. How are parents going to financially afford to send their children back to school with everything that is going on right now? Tahira, I know you want to talk on this topic.
Yeah, in light of the grants, we're not sure how long the grants will go on to. We're not sure how it will benefit the unemployed people, because we know that the unemployment right now is high, and seeing that they might extend this entire quarantine thing. I'm not sure past the April 30th. So it might lead to like the businesses, the small business keeping closed and the unemployment still it would remain. And that is where the grants will come in to help them. It have the social welfare grant, it have the rent grant, it have the food grant, and if they're benefiting from one or they get it, if this person might get one or get all. It depends on the situation I think the people
But
might be in.
the question remains to hear $1,500 does is less than
No,
minimum wage.
I don't.
Is
Yeah, I
less
don't
than
think that
minimum wage.
will be enough at all. Because they have to, if,
And
at the end of the month, if they're not employed, they have to use that to pay their bills, and they have to use that to buy things to the house to eat and whatever. And if the person have one child or two children now, it as I said, if that for the grant, we don't know how long it will go on to. Like if it how long it might last. The salary relief grant too.
Well, they're
they
saying
were
it's going
supposed,
to 3 months, right? They're saying it's
right.
supposed to be 3 months. But
But
again, I mean, there's so many other factors to consider. These said grants are still have not up to this morning. They're now saying the for those that are self-employed, the form is now available through the Ministry of Social Development. 3 weeks
I don't
after the
know.
announcement, the form has now become available. When we did the show a few days ago, the form was now available in police stations. The form being
Mm-hmm.
available does not mean the citizens have received the money. Citizens have, up to this morning, I'm reading, citizens in Port of Spain are lined up just to get their application in. So again, when you're dealing with poverty, do you really think you're going to have time to focus on the educational requirements of your children? When you're
No.
dealing with hunger, do you think the children are going to have time to study when they themselves are hungry, when they themselves are in a dysfunctional home environment? I mean, these are the things we're not considering. What are these children going through at home? And again, being single parents, we know we have a lot of single mothers in Trinidad and Tobago. What are they facing? Why are we taking so much time to process these said measly $1,500 grants, and continue to suffer the citizens of the country?
And Michelle, that issue that you raised, poverty, and Tahira used it earlier when she used the word class. I don't think our education model, our education system, it definitely and it most certainly does not consider the staggering levels of poverty that we have here in Trinidad and the fact that poverty creates an absolute disparity between the levels of education that one child can receive over another, and the fact that our education system does not permit and it doesn't allow for the social intervention that is needed in situations where poverty and where abuse and where other situations within the household can hinder and impact a child's ability to learn. And I don't think, it's not that I don't think that they get it, but there's an obvious glossing over of the fact that the levels of poverty that we have in Trinidad and Tobago takes education or puts education out of the reach of certain levels of our society. And it's a question and it's an issue that we here in the Progressive Empowerment Party would address on, because you can't expect a child from a wealthy family. Let me rephrase it this way: you can't expect a child from a family that is being abused. I will never forget this case earlier this year that I spoke about on an episode of Pep Talks in the Morning. I believe Anthony and I were hosting that show. Michelle, I'm sure, and here, I'm sure you all know this case of the father who beat the child to death and eventually killed himself
Yeah.
and left his 8-year-old son to see and witness the death of his sister and his father. And these are the kind of children who come to school and you see it reflect their work and you wonder why they're doing so poorly when you investigate and when you do deep dive into their circumstances, you find out that they come from a single parent or a poor home where they're being abused and there's nobody to follow. Because let us face it, our Ministry of Social Development and Family, it is a failure. It is a failure when just looking at this COVID-19, the way they are rolling out these grants and just how difficult they're making it for people, Ministry of Social Development is an absolute failure. But when you look at it with respect to children and how children are educated and what goes on in the household that can prevent them from being properly educated, they have failed. Because again, right in my own community, I see it, and you want to help every child, but you can't, knowing that you can't. So there's that level of frustration. But there's also the added frustration of wondering, where are the people who are in charge? Where are the people who have positions and power to be able to step in and intervene and take children out of circumstances and understand that their circumstances are going to impact on the level of education that they receive? It is going to impact on their ability to learn and absorb. And looking at the way poverty has failed, I have to say, has failed our students, because it feels like that. It's like a lot of children who do not have access to the same opportunities as children from households that abuse is not prevalent, where money is readily available, they are left behind. And our education system leaving children behind, it almost seems intentional. It almost seems like we want to make sure that we have those who can progress in society, and then we want to keep that functional illiterate society. We want to make sure that we have a base there so they can keep making uninformed decisions, keep voting on race, keep voting on tribalist politics, and never be able to think critically. And that's what we're missing right now in society. Are people who could think critically and say, "Yeah, I'm black and I vote in PNM. What has PNM really done for me from childhood growing up to now? What have they done for me in terms of my education, in terms of helping me rise out of my level of poverty? What have they done for me?" And this is what we're not teaching children. We're not teaching them to think critically, so that by the time they reach into adulthood, they can make informed decisions and question the nonsense that we are seeing that is passing for government right now. Sorry, now I
Felicia,
went on.
it's deliberate disregard to the other elements that should be considered, to the social elements, to the poverty elements, to the all the elements that are plaguing our society in Trinidad and Tobago. It is deliberate disregard because we want to keep the population undereducated. You know, my family migrated over 60 years ago. My sister went to NAPS. I think she was one or two in the country at that time. And she, to this day, cannot believe how the system in Trinidad has just gone from such a high level to basically, she cannot believe how much illiteracy we are facing in Trinidad. And it goes to show, you think the government doesn't know that we have citizens that aren't able to complete forms. Right now, these grants, a lot of citizens cannot even read the forms. So again, you think our governments past and present don't know this? It is a deliberate action to keep the population undereducated so the madness continues in this country.
Exactly. And the Progressive Empowerment Party, I read a piece by Kenneth Luke, who is the head of our advisory council, and I do talk a little bit now, talk a little bit on our proposals for education, because it's a very holistic approach that looks at the different levels that children learn. And I was reading again, like I said last night, on the Scandinavian education system. And the way they approach education, it's taken into account, like Michelle said earlier, that children learn differently. It's like asking a monkey, an elephant, and a snake to take a test, and the test is climbing a tree. All three are definitely not going to pass the test, because only one of those is skilled at climbing a tree. And as we do in our present education system, we take children learn at different levels, learn in different ways, and tell them you all have to sit the same test, and we're all expecting you to either pass or fail. And if you fail, for the rest of your life, you're going to most likely either have to work extremely hard to rise to the level of those who would have passed the test with flying colors, or you're just going to be stuck in a certain level in society where you would forever be fighting up and having to live on handouts and
Yeah,
constantly complaining begging your government. This is what we do to the children in our present education model.
the
And
education system should really focus on like exploring their talents and making them feel like they're worthy. So even though if they realize they're not academically inclined, they know that they won't grow up with this thinking that I'm good for nothing. I pass a horrible school. I don't know where my future is. You know, that is what the education system right now is like teaching.
exactly, and that what you mentioned there, Tahira, that stigma and shame of passing for a terrible school. And I hate to say it like that, but that is the reality of what we do and force upon these children. There's a stigma, and I know it's a wrong examination, not examination, when results come out, and there's either that glow or gleam on your face when you get to say I passed for this school, or there's that shame and the hope that nobody asks you because you don't want to say that I passed for this senior comprehensive or I passed for this, because there's that stigma that is attached to passing for what people consider a bad school. And the fact that we have good and bad schools in a country where the teachers go to the same teaching college, get the same
Yeah,
they follow the same curriculum is unbelievable to me. And of course we don't expect all students to learn and advance the same way, but then if we're not expecting that, why are we forcing them an examination that, like we said earlier, is only tailored to one particular style of I'm very good. I remember in school I was very good at repetition. I have what they call a photographic memory. So I'd look at the page and in an examination I can sit down and regurgitate everything on that page. Ask me an hour later, 2 hours later, a week later, what on earth did I learn in that entire exercise? And I can't tell you, but if you check my marks, I would have passed with flying colors. And that's what we do right now. We tell
yes,
children, regurgitate this. And if you're good at regurgitating, congrats to you. You can pass for a prestige school, a 7-year school, and be given access to a prestige education. And if you're terrible at regurgitation, you know what? Your punishment, and it's clearly a punishment, your punishment here. You get pass to the secondary school where teachers don't come to school, or where they're in school and bullying and the same curriculum that is being in prestige school is being taught to you, but you're not ever going to learn the same way that they learn. That's what we do right now. So it's the education model that the PEP favors is abolishing SCA. We spoke about it at the beginning and we'll speak about it now. Abolishing the SCA because it is a child abusing, unnecessary examination. Children should be afforded the opportunity to learn critical thinking. They should be afforded the opportunity to make mistakes, to grow in the way that they are going to grow, because from very early you can identify a child who's good with their minds. You can identify children who are good with their hands, and that's something that I think, Michelle, we don't pay enough attention to children and people who are good with their hands and who are good at things like woodworking and mechanical engineering and stuff like that. When I was younger, there were very few professions that they insisted or they guided you towards. Instead, they always say, here, learn this and study this book. Whereas right now we are seeing a world where people who are good with their hands and people who are good with thinking critically are the ones who are being paid the highest for jobs that are now new in terms of professional, in terms of jobs and professions that are available, that are on in the scheme of world things right now. So looking at what we're teaching children is a very prehistoric way of educating our students. I'm giving you all an opportunity to jump in here because I'm talking.
It, Well, what we're not doing is a well-rounded student. For example, in my school, I did go to a private school, but it was very well-rounded in terms of the academic program. It encouraged creativity. It encouraged, as well as, the basic academics. It explored each student's grading ability. In terms of, students' aptitude and so forth. It had different programs on, as you said, on home economics, on creativity, on art. I mean, art was mandatory in our school, and why it was mandatory, because it was encouraging that creative side of you, of not regurgitating. And as we mentioned, the regurgitation, the memory, hence the reason we just have people in the society that basically cannot apply what they have learned, and that is sad, because memory, that's a short-term memory. It's not going to get you anywhere long term, and we see it play out. We see it play out in the society in Trinidad and Tobago, in management of operations. We wonder what is going on here that everyone can't remember, basic economics 101, basic finance 101, is because people have been taught to just memorize and short term hold that information. Whereas, from the US, and again, I went to a private school, we were encouraged, like, let's say, for example, you had vocabulary. Not only did you have to memorize the definition of the vocabulary, weeks later you had to apply that vocabulary in your in your assignment. So it wasn't, you couldn't memorize the definition and think, oh, I passed the test. The teachers would now say, Michelle, you have not applied it in your last exams. So long term it kept with you, and we're not doing that. We're not looking at ways to enhance our system. We continue with the prehistoric ways of thinking.
Exactly. And I was going to read this piece, at least piece of a post put out by Kenneth Luke, who is the head of our advisory council, that talks a little bit more about the education model that the Progressive Empowerment Party favors, that we would like to introduce given the chance of office. And it goes on to say, the education model favors aspects of the Scandinavian education systems where they have adopted adaptive curricula oversighted by a longitudinal data system known as LDS to generate accountable and transparent views into students, teachers, and principals/schools performance, including parents in their child's progress monitoring action plans at each step. And I want to step in here to say this, that particular aspect of what we propose for education is something that I hold in very high esteem, because as of right now, we have students who we would identify this child is obviously not performing, and at a primary school level, this child is not performing, yet there's very little information, or there's hardly ever deep dive into why this child is not performing. And by using the longitudinal data system that is going to generate accountable and transparent views into the students, we're not just looking at the students, we're also looking at the teachers, we're looking at the principals, we're looking at the schools, and we're also involving the parents in the child's progress. And I think that is something that is very critical to the development of a child, and to development of their minds, and it will tell where they would go in terms of their education. And right now, we have children that we know of, like I said, who are not performing, but there's no real query or inquest into why they are not performing. Is it that the child has a learning disability? Is it that they are having problems at home? Is it the teacher? Sometimes when you look at a lot of memes going around Facebook, that now that parents have to homeschool their children, they're going to realize it's not the teacher, it's actually their children. And it was a funny meme, but sometimes it could actually be the teachers, and it could be the fact that the teacher is not teaching in a way that all the children are going to learn and understand. I mean, of course, this is twinned with the fact that our education system, like we know, is really only tailored for one way of learning. But then it can also be the school, and it is reflective of the principals and the schools in the area, and being able to track and trace a child's education through, rather than examination, but through a grade point average, would be able to help you track and trace a child until they're well into their teens, and track their development, track how they are advancing, track how they are learning, and if there are issues, allow for intervention. And right now, that's what we're missing in most cases. We are missing that that key that can give you an intervention. Because if you see a child is scoring a grade point average of 3.4 one term, and then next term they drop to 2.2, something is clearly wrong. And an education system that gives you an LDS model that allows you to track and trace and hold people accountable, you will now be able to look into the child's history. You can look into the teacher's history. You can look into the principal's and the school's history to be properly and investigate why the child may not be learning at the level that they should be learning. And this system, which again it's favored by countries like Norway and Finland. This system, the reason why it works and the reason why Finland is rated as top, as rated as number one in terms of education in the world, is because they are very much committed to the overall advancement and the development of the child. They're not focused on making them regurgitate and learn by rote. They're focused on the actual development of the child, and understanding that the development of the child extends further than the classroom.
Yes.
Is where we can really understand and educate children at the level that they should be educated at. Like I said, like you said,
Felicia, that word accountability, we discussed that a lot in the Progressive Empowerment Party. The reason why I love our education proposal is because it does hold the teachers, the system accountable for the students' performance. And we don't. Let's be real. We have a major issue of teachers not coming to school and teaching. We know that. We know that is a major issue. I have friends that have children, and I cannot tell you how many hundreds of times, yes, I said hundreds, that the teachers do not come to school. So right now we have to hold, and with the Progressive Empowerment Party, we propose the student has a GPA, the teacher has a GPA, the principal has a GPA, the district has a GPA. Therefore, you can determine the overall performance, and the class is judged as a whole. So if the class is averaging 75%, and the national average is 80%, that means the teacher is underperforming. And then you deep dive, well, why is that average so low? Then you deep dive and you find out, well, the teacher wasn't there 8 classes for the month. Again, that is left it unto the students to learn for themselves. So we need to start holding everyone accountable in the education system, not only the students and this one exam to determine their future.
Exactly. And that accountability that we talk about, and I want people to understand it, is at all levels. We talk about accountability in our government. We have to also address that issue of accountability in our education system as well, because just like Michelle rightly said, if there is an issue, we need to be able to pinpoint it. And that's what we're lacking in so many levels of our society right now. If you look at most of the things that are going wrong, it's because there's nobody accountable for it. I'm listening to that whole issue with the Sandy Grande, the Brooklyn rehabilitation facility, which is the step down after you have tested asymptomatic of COVID-19. And the choice of the facility and who chose it and why was it chosen. I mean, we're going to talk about that later in the program. But when you drill down to it, it's because there's no real and clear accountability. We still have the minister talking about we're going to do an investigation. An investigation at this point, no. You should be able to say outright, this person is the one in charge and accountable for things going wrong. And we are missing that. We have so much red tape, so much bureaucracy, that there's never any clear line of identifying and pointing out problems. And that's what we do in this country. So many problems are swept under the carpet, they are glossed over, they are ignored because we have no real level of accountability in many, if not all, of our systems of government, education, health, social services. Across the board, there is none.
Agreed, and that's why we have the problems that we do, because we don't hold anyone accountable. There should be no investigation. They should know exactly who they gave that rental agreement to. What investigation is required? Why was the rent? Why was that chosen? Again, we kind of circumvent anytime governance kind of circumvents issues, and we push it under the rug and pretend as though it doesn't exist. And the lack of accountability is what it continues destroying our country, because we have investigation and over again, and nothing comes out of it. We say that at the Progressive Empowerment Party. If one party is doing wrong and the other, well, why doesn't one investigate each other? Because we don't want to hold anybody accountable. We don't want the flaws to come out. We don't want the real truth to come out in these scenarios. So we continue to just lack accountability in this country.
And I just wanted to continue reading this piece from Kenneth before I wrap up this topic on education and move on into one of the other topics that we have planned for today. And it goes on to say, since an LDS tracks individual students, and again, longitudinal data system, and this is, for those who don't understand longitudinal data, it's supposed to track you over a period of time from the time you enter the education system to the time that you have to leave the education system. Since an LDS tracks individual students, teachers, principals, schools, etc., these data can be rolled up to a national level, identifying early propensities for adaptation to specific streams of learning. And this speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where children learn at different rates. They learn via different ways. Again, some are good with their hands, some are good with hearing, some are good with reading, etc. And this greatly aids in planning and budgeting. And that's what we see. We see at budget time, we hear we are spending $5-7 billion on education, but we don't really know where that money is going. At a budget time for the Progressive Empowerment Party, you would hear that $1 million is being spent on online learning. $1 million is being, and I'm just using arbitrary figures here, but you should be able to hear a breakdown of the different ways that we're going to teach and educate our children. For those where social service program intervention is required, this can be easily recognized early and rapidly addressed as an individual. For those where social service program intervention is required, this can be easily recognized early and rapidly addressed at an individual through national level, as that dovetails with our healthcare and social development policy. And again, this is just what we were talking about earlier, where in cases where a child may be found to be learning at a rate that is probably behind other students, that where he may have been doing very well in one school year versus another school year, this allows the system that we like to implement as the Progressive Empowerment Party, the GPA system that we mentioned earlier. It would allow you to track, and not just track, but implement intervention where it is needed. And let's face it, Trinidad is a society where a lot of social services intervention is needed. When you look on a community level, you look on a national level, there are high cases of abuse, high cases of incest, and all of these can stem and they all trace back to the high levels of poverty that we have in the country. But again, a PEP government would want to address all of that. I mean, like Kenneth wrote, dovetail with health and education and social services, as well as jobs and poverty eradication, and providing hope and opportunity for all to rebuild the communities, to rebuild the families, because this is what is lacking right now. If you do a study into Trinidad and Tobago, actually you don't have to do a study. Go into the university and pull any one of those theses off of these shelves, and it would read the same things that are being written over and over and over, that looks at why Trinidad is where it is. Poverty is a huge reason behind failures in education, failures in our healthcare, failure in social services. All of these things dovetail, and they can be traced back to poverty. Of course, poverty eradication and job creation is job number one for the Progressive Empowerment Party. Yeah? Zahira, you look like you want to say something. I see you smiling there.
No, I was, in light of how you were speaking about the terms that they're not really learning, when you talk about memorizing the information and putting it on paper, that comes into play when you go to tertiary education. You're going to, I grew up doing that from secondary school, memorizing words and writing it. And when I went to tertiary education, I realized that if I do that, I don't see the results that I used to get in high school in my exam. I used to get a different result. So learning is actually very important, more than just studying, just trying to pound it in your head. And that is something that will happen to this set of students going to write SCA right now, seeing that they only have 1 month to prepare.
Exactly. So at this point, we're going to take a quick break and come back to touch on some of the remaining topics that we have to discuss today. I would also let you know that we are opening the phone lines at about 9:30 to take your questions and your comments. Please stay with us. We will be right back.
Antel is Trinidad's most reliable and technically experienced ICT company, providers of quality structured cabling, Cat6 data fiber and power cables. We also stock cabling infrastructure basket-type cable trays for server rooms and data centers. Antel also installs and maintains video security systems including cameras, alarms and electronic entrance locks for businesses and residential properties. Call Antel 674-1406 or 783-9250.
And we are back for the second hour of the Pep Talks in the Morning program. Thank you for staying with us. We have started a birthday club as of yesterday, but from either my Facebook is incorrect, but I don't seem to have any Peppers who are celebrating a birthday today. So if I did miss your birthday, apologies and happy birthday, whoever you may be. Don't forget, we have a birthday club now, so feel free to send your shout outs as a text or as a message, or you can call me during the program at around 9:30 to send your shout out to anyone of the world. I know during COVID, days are not going to be what they were prior to 19. I saw somebody celebrating last week, and it was just him and his cake, and I said, you know what, this is a opportunity to introduce a birthday club to the Pep Talks in the Morning, where we can make your day a little extra special, even though we're going through this rough time as of COVID-19. I personally am hoping that I do not have to celebrate my birthday under quarantine, but depending on how the world goes, it may not be an option. So, jumping back into the topics today under discussion, Michelle sent an article yesterday, and I mean, we've been talking about it. We've been building up to this topic. We knew it was coming. We spoke about it yesterday with the Venezuelans who are now out of work and facing eviction by landlords. But how is and a live issue right now for many of us here in Trinidad and Tobago as the COVID-19 continues and is going to be extended. And in constituencies, we are having people reaching out saying that they definitely facing a lot of hard times. Many of them are not accessing the grants, and the reality is, people, especially people with families, are literally going hungry. Michelle.
It is a critical issue, and I've been speaking about poverty in Trinidad and Tobago for a while now because it is very concerning. At the Progressive Empowerment Party, we know that's the number one issue we need to fight in terms of and correct in terms of getting this country back to where it needs to belong. What coronavirus has really revealed to us as a country is that many of our citizens are living on the brink of poverty. And it is clearly evident by the madness that is going on right now. Within 24 hours of the grant announcement, literally the next morning at 8 o'clock, people were lined up at all of the NIB offices trying to access grants within less than 12 hours of that announcement. And it shows that citizens are basically living day to day. And it's the elephant in the room. Poverty is something a country probably doesn't want to exist. But how did we get to this point in Trinidad and Tobago? In a country that has experienced two oil booms, why is poverty even in our language? All our citizens should be rich. We had one of the highest GDPs in the country in the world, and now we find ourselves citizens literally on the bread line, talking about basic rice, flour, oil to get by. So as we indicated earlier, how do you concentrate on education when the kids are hungry? Right now, we have several single parents that have gone to social media and they are pleading for assistance for the basic necessities to feed their children. Poverty is something we continue to disregard in this country because we have clearly seen we continue to be managed from a 1% perspective. And it's never about the citizens. It's always about this one elite group and how it benefits them. These grants, as we have been talking about, should have been executed with ease, as it was done in Canada. We indicated that a few days ago. In Canada, the turnaround for the assistance, the $2,000 grant, was executed in 48 hours to the citizens. So why was that not done here in Trinidad?
And Michelle, that question reason about why the grants have not been yet given to the people who need it the most. And I'm seeing some private businesses stepping up and filling in the gaps where our government should rightfully be stepping up. And this is my question. We took a one within the first week of COVID-19 lockdown. Within the first week, before we did anything else, the first press conference, the Prime Minister said we need to make a $1.12 million withdrawal, US million dollar withdrawal from the. And I think for many people, the first thought was, we're not going to be working. We are not sending our children to school, so they have no access to the school feeding program. This $1.12 billion US withdrawal, or 10 billion TT dollars, is going to be used to fund and to assist people during this time. Yet we are here today, a full month from since that announcement was made, and we to date have no idea how and where this money is being spent. And the areas that we are expecting that it is needed the most are the areas where it seems to be lacking. And the areas that we needed the most is feeding people, literally, Michelle, feeding people, putting food on the tables for people. For this man to call MP and crying for the third time, and that's what the article said. He said that his constituents call him crying and saying things that are absolutely desperate. It's not just him, it's his family. So the money that withdrew and the money that is needed, where is it going? Where is it actually going? What are we spending it on? Go ahead.
Right. Alicia, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, accountability. This morning in the papers, it indicates that $47 million has already been spent in the social service department. In terms of, and they clearly indicate that it can, half of it, some of it is for grants, but the citizens are saying no one has received grants. The paperwork is indicating that the paperwork hasn't even been processed. People, it is, there are several articles this morning as we wake up referencing that citizens are still standing up in lines to get the form. So how has $47 million already been spent in the past month? And referencing grants when we know this, these grants, up to a few days ago, they just indicated the forms were available in the police station. So again, where is the accountability of where this money is being spent? And citizens are suffering. You're seeing it on Facebook right now. The basic essentials citizens don't have. So again, it reflects on our society. We are living on the brink of poverty. We are living, and what is the government doing about that? Why was that $1.2 billion US taken from the HSF fund if we, the citizens, are seeing no evidence of where it is being spent?
Very, very, very good question. And at this point, we unfortunately have to lose Tahira for, well, we're going to lose her in the program. Tahira, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on Pep Talks in the morning. It was very nice to have you perspective, and I hope and we will have you back on an episode of Pep Talks in the morning very soon. You could give your clothes and say bye-bye before you leave.
Okay, thank you for having me, and really hope to be here next time.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Michelle, back on the topic of these, we are staring down the barrel of uncertainty, and that is the reality. I know people who are from, well, actually, let me not talk about people. Let me talk about myself. I am having to measure twice and plan. And I mean, the last time I went to the grocery, I'm thinking about things that can last a while, thinking about
Yeah.
meals that I might have to eat in a month, 2 times. I mean, I'm not stocking up on a year's worth of toilet paper like some people did and are doing, but I'm still planning ahead as to, in the event that this should have to go on longer than the time stipulated for it to go on. But even in that planning, I'm very much aware that there's still that level of uncertainty. And even in that planning, you have to be mindful of what you're buying. I mean, Anthony spoke yesterday of paying $41 a block of cheese that he would usually pay $10, $12, $13 for. And now you're buying things and you're in the grocery and you have to study what is a want versus a need. I mean, the first week of quarantine, I had second time I went to the grocery, snacks was now a luxury. And this is me, what I am experiencing right now. I'm thinking about the families who literally have, because you have 2 and 3 mouths to feed. You have to pick up peas. Things like snacks are, it's more than a luxury. It's things that you can't even enjoy buying right now. And this is a reality for some. This is a reality for many. And again, while I applaud the private institutions who are trying to step up, I applaud the initiatives of people who are trying to do their part. The reality is that a lot of these people the help is still not reaching to all of the people who need it. And this is where I listened to one of those speaker cars driving yesterday from the Ministry of Health, reminding people to wash their hands and to stay inside. And I'm thinking, where are the cars to drive around to talk to people and assess who may actually need help versus who are in dire straits? And people, I don't know about you, through. She has a feeling of people just being and being movable, packing out and putting back some stuff because like I said, the reality is you have to measure twice. You have to think down the line. You have to think down the road of where this is going to be. The grants were being told for 3 months. Schools in reopen until December. That means parents have children now and then. That is what another 3 months for them to
Right.
have to provide and table. What is being done and is the government thinking about these situations, particularly by low-income earners, particularly by who have already been affected and impacted by poverty and being retrenched and laid off? Are they thinking about
Right.
these things?
They're not, because we saw in the first announcements that 50 phone cards, 50 food cards were given to the MPs. Where did that amount of 50 per constituency come from? Where did they determine? They said I guess they had a list of, but I mean, to be realistically, can we honestly look at each constituency and say only 50 people were impacted? No, we cannot. So that number I was not in agreement with at all. Then they extended, saying those that currently have food cards, they will be topped up. Again, we all have been impacted, Felicia, and I can totally relate to what you're saying in terms of the grocery. The average person has been impacted by this pandemic, by this lockdown, by this quarantine. And what this has clearly shown is the have and the have-nots in our society in Trinidad and Tobago. It shows that who is living on the brink is quite a higher percentage of what we don't want to admit to ourselves as a nation. It shows that the 1%, this will not impact them. They are financially well off, and they, unlike you and I, don't have to look at the block of cheese and look at the price and see that it has dominoed in the recent past weeks, which leads to the price gouging that is currently taking place. So, what would have cost you $10 in the last month is now probably gone up to $40. And again, the average citizen, $1,500 is not going to put a dent in anything that they have to do because the prices have been driven up so much in the past few weeks. So what this has shown is it has clearly made a definition of the financially privileged in this country and the average working person, the average poor or poverty class person that has no access, that was living day to day. A young man, he came on Facebook, I think a couple days ago, and indicated, how do you expect us to survive when we were hustling day to day? And we're not looking at that. What about the average day hustlers that were, washing cars, that were selling fruit on the side of the road, that they were doing minor job duties to basically survive? And now that has been taken away. And now the government continues to be delaying at giving these grants out that are just basically going to help citizens with a minimum. I think I lost Felicia. Did I lose Felicia? Okay, I think I did lose Felicia. Felicia, did I lose you?
I lost you for a second hearing you now.
Not hearing you if you can hear me.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I did lose you for a second, but you're hearing me now, okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. I missed the end of what you were saying, sorry, and if you can repeat it.
No, I was just saying in terms of, it has really brought out the financial, basically separation of what our country is. We are not admitting that a poverty continues to be an issue in our country, and the have and the have-nots have clearly been defined in this COVID-19 pandemic. We see citizens on the breadline basically lined up in the hot sun for a $1,500 grant that continues to have so much bureaucracy behind it that we cannot go forward, that we as citizens can't even access the $1,500 that is supposedly being given to us.
Exactly. And at this point, Michelle, and I hope you're hearing me okay. Am I coming
Yes,
across okay?
yes,
Yeah. At this point, in a, I mean, with this a progressive empowerment party government, I would say many things would have been done differently. I would like to think that we would not have even been in a situation like this if this were our fourth year of government. Certain systems would have definitely been revised, especially our social service, social development system, and the way we treat with the most vulnerable people in our society. Because you said it, the rich right now they're unimpacted. I saw some posts that on the affluent are down the islands right now barbecuing,
right,
sing fit. Disparity is so great because then you look at the class people who are whole and counting pennies, knowing that okay, I have lost my job or my husband is retrenched. We're not sure what is happening next month, and they're not on Facebook complaining, but they themselves know that things like they used to be, and then you have folks who have already been impacted, already been living day to day, living on for some people on grants and food cards who have things doubly extra hard. You're looking at this circumstance right now, and you again with progressive departments and seeing things that were happening right now, there would definitely be an action plan to address the clear inequality in our society and the haves and the have-nots. Like you said, well, this COVID-19, depending on what level you fall in, is going to be experienced completely differently. For some people,
yes,
this month is a vacation, this month is a
yes,
holiday. For some people, this month is literally it's literally a case of am I going to how am I eating tomorrow?
it's
For some,
tomorrow.
and that is the reality. How am I eating tomorrow? And it's not to say that you know class inequality doesn't exist elsewhere in the world, but to the levels that it exists in this country and to the levels that it exists in a country that is so rich in resources, so rich in terms of everything that we have to offer the world. And this is not even counting oil and gas. We talk about it
Right.
all the time. Our pitch lake, our Nyland
Yeah.
pool, our everything that we have to offer as this country should have us as a top player in the world. Yes, there's poverty everywhere in the world, but to the staggering levels that it exists here in Trinidad and Tobago, it is unbelievable for a country
Yes.
that is so rich, and I say so rich figuratively, but so rich in terms of all of the resources that we have, and it should not be the inequality in society. The fact that people are living on $2,850 a month,
Yeah.
whereas rent is $2,500 a month. These are things that before COVID-19 were a problem. During COVID-19, it is a problem. And I hope, well, for me, I'm really interested in the well-being of all its people. I would hope that it is something that they have an action plan to address post COVID-19, because this situation has really laid the country bare. It has really laid us. It has really showed us who we are, where we are as a people, and it
Correct.
is unfair. It is unfair that so many people are left behind, not because they want to be left behind, not because when you look at some of the poor classes, Michelle, these are some hardworking people. These
Yes.
are people who would
Yes.
and work on 3 jobs a day and
Yes.
still struggle to make ends meet, because it's not because they're not hardworking enough, and when this Hadid lady last week jumped on herself to talk about the 99%, that and where we should have had a huge in community who tend to look down on the 99% who prop up their own business. 99% are the ones who prop up these businesses. The 99% are the ones who wake up and go and work and turn chicken and cash at the register. At these 1% businesses, they're the one who patronize these businesses, who buy food and all of these things
Exactly.
that and one, these are some very hard working people. So to point them out to be lazy and unappreciative is not that. It's that we have a system right now that leaves them behind. We have a system right now that pays them pigeon poor wages for the
Right,
work that they
right.
do, and it's a reality that we have to face and a real government would address.
We at the Progressive Empowerment Party, we have always discussed the concept of living wage. You know, reviewing the a wage that you can live on. And you know, for example, I'll give you an example. Prior to the pandemic, so we have been facing a cost of living issue for a while now. We have seen prices progressively increase over time prior to the pandemic. And just to give you, and 4 years ago, I came across a receipt in my, you know, my wallet, and it was from 4 years ago when I went to the grocery buying the necessities. And that bill was $580, not including meat, not including you know, vegetables or anything, just basic canned goods. It was 580. And do you know when I went to the grocery last time, that same grocery list has almost doubled. So prior to the pandemic, we were already facing a cost of living issue, which the Progressive Empowerment Party has always highlighted. We need to discuss a living wage. How are people going to survive off a wage that is suitable to the cost of living in this country? We are looking at the banks now. We have discussed with the banks and looked at reviewing the banks, one of our policies, the gap between buying and selling, because that adds up to 10 to 13% to the cost of living in this country. And we see the banks right now, they're deferring loans, as they say, but they're still doing the interest and the loan is just deferred. They're not forgiving the 3 months, they're just simply deferring it. So the banks in this case are a major player in the cost of living for this country. And now you have price gouging on top of it. So you had citizens that haven't got a raise in over 5 years. So now they're the same money power that they would have had, spending power, disposable income. That no longer, that's probably half the amount they used to have. So we have never addressed poverty in this country. And now it is clearly evident that we are on the verge, if not on the brink, of a country that can really be easily identified as a poverty stricken country in terms of what the average citizen is facing.
After this, I'm
Right.
expecting the government, because this has more or less presented. You hearing me okay, right? I feel
Yes,
like
yes.
my connection is very poor this morning, and for all of the viewers, I really apologize for that. But I hope I'm coming across clear enough that you understand me. I feel that you know, this situation has presented, or it can present, or many would try to use it as the perfect out, but it's not an out because, like I said, it has only laid us bare for who and what we really are. And
Yes.
just, I believe it was Satish Ramsaran who would have posted something on his constituency page that spoke about for countries. And I remember at the beginning of the year, you were hearing about all of these businesses, all of these banks, massy stores making millions of dollars in profits.
Yes.
And you're thinking, well, I mean, on paper, we are a wealthy country,
Country.
but
Right.
wealth is so unevenly distributed. The wealth is like we are saying, the wealth is for those who have, and those who don't have, they're the ones who are contributing to the wealth of these people. And I mean, Michelle, something as simple as home ownership, and I say something as simple as home ownership because right now many people are facing eviction from landlords. Many people are being threatened to be evicted, despite the Prime Minister, very in his eloquence and, all of his thing with landlords. There has still not been anything stipulated, as in landlords have not been told you cannot charge rent for this period, or if you try to evict a tenant during this period, face this amount of action. It wasn't anything like that, when you look at
No.
it was just basically saying, please have a heart, don't do it. But landlords, just like people who rent from landlords, have to live. They have to. And especially some of these fly-by-night landlords who build a little annex behind a house or put up a rush apartment and renting it for $3,500 a month. They have no rent authority board over their heads, so they have nobody to be accountable to. And again, this is what we were talking about earlier, a lack of accountability in our system. So they can basically do what they want. And when you look at the amount of people in this country who rent, Misha, money that could be paying a mortgage towards a home that they can own every month. I remember when I had just started working. I was so excited. I got my first real job and I was making what I considered big money at the time. And I was so excited to, quote unquote, move out my mom's house. And at that time I was thinking, well, based on my salary, there were no mortgages being offered to somebody on a contract position. So I was considering renting. And I eventually rethought that position because rent, in essence, turns out to be, for many people, dead money. I say dead money. Yes, you have to put a roof over your head, but you're basically paying for a home that you would never be able to own. And I always wondered, the amount of money that we spend in rent in this country, wouldn't it have been better if these citizens were allowed to pay that same money towards a mortgage every month? Why is home ownership so hard? Why is it so hard?
Well, let's first address the concept of the entire HDC structure, which continues to be plagued by corruption. It is estimated over 80% of HDC homeowners have not paid their mortgage in quite a number of months, in excess of years. I personally know one or two people that have never paid it, and they have been living in that facility for 3 years. They have never once paid the mortgage. They got in through political connection, and that was it. And of course, they're not employed either. So let's discuss the HDC factor of it, how corrupt it is, and why it doesn't cater to the average citizen. We know it's being used as a political tool. We know it's only distributed based on election years. That's the only time we hear the distribution. So the average citizen is not privy to even qualifying for that. We've heard the nightmare stories of persons being on that waiting list for over 20 years more, and still not being called for an HDC home. So again, we look at a system that is naturally corrupt. We look at the average person not making a livable wage. Therefore, they cannot qualify for these applications. We look at the banks that will not give these citizens the loans, as we at the Progressive Empowerment Party suggest of doing an interest-free loan, and for a number of 30 years or more, 30 years. So basically, the opportunity is not available. So how do we expect citizens to even gain access to homes when everywhere you turn, it's blocking them? The system is corrupt, the banks aren't giving the loans, and the livable wage is not being enforced and not being considered by those that are governing in power.
I mean, the fact that these systems is set up to keep people behind, just like you're saying, should be obvious to all. If not, I mean, if it's not obvious, this exactly as you laid it out there, Michelle, it should become obvious to the people who were not aware. And the fact that we keep our people behind, because if you don't have a PNM party card, or if you don't have a UNC party card and my party not in power, you can't get on, you can't access a home. Whereas we have homes right now, you pass them and they empty, they uninhabited,
Empty.
they broken and they vandalized and they're just there rotting away. We have people paying hundreds of dollars in rents that they can't be paying as a political tool. To me, is one of the most disgusting ways that you could control and basically keep people down, because I mean, the basic need of a person to have a roof over their head. That's
Yeah.
one of the basic, most common needs of every fish under a tent tree or something. You need to live somewhere. You need to home. Anti home ownership, the way we have done in this country, is really a testament to how your government feels about you. To young professionals, people with families, and you're working a good job and your wife is working a good job, and you know, you're saying, at this point you should be asking the question, why is it so difficult for me to own a home? And the step up from asking that question is, if I have all of the qualifications, if I meet the minimum requirements, if my wife is working a good job, I am making enough money, why am I being kept behind? And at this point, you need to understand that it is deliberate. I'll never forget going for a loan from a banking institution. I had more than half of the, or I had about half of the purchase in my own home. I was blanked for the most silly of reasons that I wouldn't even get into right now. But after I left the institution, I realized this is the system that people that used to tell me about. This is the system that they say is designed to keep you behind. And as citizens, we have to understand that none of this is by coincidence. We have to understand that it is clearly deliberate. It has to be deliberate. Why are they keeping people behind? Why are they using homes and jobs as political tools? I'll
Yeah.
never forget around election time. Here, put your name on this list. You could get a
Yes.
corporation job. Jobs are, again, one of the, just like a house is a basic need. People need money, they need to work, they need to be able to provide and feed their families. Politicizing jobs and CPEP and European corporation jobs like we do, we have to realize that the systems that we have in this country are broken, and we will talk about it until people realize, and we'll talk about that light bulb in your head clicks, that I'm doing everything right. I went through all the right channels, but I'm still not able to advance in life. Why is that? You have to ask yourself these questions, and you can no longer take it as a coincidence. You have to realize that the way this country is set up is not set up to benefit the average man, and to have to know somebody and to have a connection to get it. That's the way countries that work. That's not how it's supposed to operate. Life is difficult. Life throws you some curveballs, but it is not meant to be this hard.
Exactly. It is not meant to be this difficult. But you know, when you were speaking, I was thinking of the fact that when everyone says, you know, I'm not into politics, and we need to realize that we are living politics. All of the discussion that the Progressive Empowerment Party continues to have is highlighting that you are living politics. The system, the political system, is blocking you from a home. The political system is blocking you from jobs, government jobs, because it is so corrupted and plagued by favoritism and nepotism. The political system is what has you not having water in your tanks. The political system is now determining your future of your children. So when you say you are not living politics, we at the Progressive Empowerment Party are saying, yes, you are living politics, and you are political, whether you want to admit it or not. And we as citizens need to start looking at a holistic approach, not, oh, I'm going to get a URP job. Look at governance that is going to benefit your overall living, your overall quality of living, your overall governance. Stop looking at, I got a $70 a day job and I don't care, that's who I'm voting for. Look at the holistic approach. Am I getting water in my pipes? Can I eventually buy a home? Are they going to regulate the bank so I'm not paying interest and I'm not paying fees exorbitant that I cannot even afford? We need to start looking at things from a holistic approach instead of just looking at me as citizens and what benefits individually instead of holistically.
That comment that you just made, think as a collective and not just as individuals. You see it a lot in society, and I also want to see have bred that kind of culture on these systems that we haven't really built a community approach to things. Well, because things are so hard, you tend to want to fight up for you and the people in your clothes and stuff like that. And that community spirit, because of how broken we are, because of how corruption has impacted us as a country, it has broken it a lot. But that it is also important that we understand and to account exactly what Michelle just said there, that everything is politics, everything is political. The corruption that we experience, the difficulties in advancing it, all of that is for me yesterday. And we had a discussion. He wanted to join the Progressive Empowerment Party, and we were talking, and I hear this a lot from people. I was never into politics and I was never political and I never thought that I would join a political party. I said, dude, guy, same thing on my end. 3 years ago, almost 3.5 years ago, I never thought that I would see myself signing my name on a form to get a party card for anything. I never ever thought. I'll never forget the first meeting of the Progressive Empowerment Party that I went to the launch, and I spoke at the podium, and after, somebody ushered me to the side and offered me a membership form, and I made an excuse to get out of it. But the reality was I was terrified. I never saw myself as joining a political movement, much less being as vocal as I am today, much less being in the position as the chairman of a political organization. But as I told the young gentleman yesterday, I said, if every single citizen realized that they had a part to play in the politics that surround every single citizen would get involved, would understand that politics is what they need to pay attention to. Somebody posted it, Satish again. Nobody ever paid attention to politics until they realized that their children would have to be home until September. And that is true. Politics also impacts your education as well. And everything that we spoke about here this morning, it deals with politics and politicians and government, and the role of government is the well-being of its people. And people like to take the government out of it, and they like to say, but Rowley can't do that, and what you expect him to do? What we expect Rowley to do is his job. You are the leader, you are the steward of an entire nation. If we could have done it, if 1.4 million of us could have been in parliament, we would have done it. But the reality is we can't. That's why we elect a group of leaders. That's why we elect people that should have vision. That's why we elect a group of people that should have a plan to take us to a first world nation. I mean, we're still operating in a country where water, a basic necessity as water, is still unavailable to some. And the fact that we have government that is talking real water for all at a time 2020 is alarming. And we'll have to understand that is the rule, fund, responsibility, and purpose of government. And should you neglect politics, should you say that has nothing to do with me, it is basically you saying that I am okay with things as it is. I am okay with not with this and having full water from a sandpipe. I'm okay with not having water for the past month or 2 months. As some cases are experiencing it. That is you saying that I am okay with my child having to pass for a bad school because I cannot afford to educate him as a child from an affluent family can. That is you saying that I am okay with never being able to own a home. That is you saying that I am okay with having worked at a pays me enough to cover half a month's rent. Everything that you accept right now in terms of your politics, every time you say and you turn a blind eye to the things that politicians do, you staying okay with it. And citizens need to wake up and realize that if you're not okay with it, the time to get involved in politics is now. And join the PEP. I'm not saying join the Progressive Empowerment Party. I'm not saying come. I'm not even saying come and work and serve with us. I'm not saying that. But open your eyes to the realities around us. Open your eyes to the things that don't work in this country and try to remove your party lens. Try to remove your race lens. Try to remove your hoot auntie, my grandmother used to vote for and who she can. Particularly families that have young children, try to think on your own bias and with thought and think logically. In the next 5 years, where do I see Trinidad and Tobago based on how we're operating now? Where do I see us in the next 10 years? We talking Vision 2020 since I'm a baby. 2020 is here and we still almost in the same state. Yeah, we have some high-rise buildings and we have movie town and we have cinemas and cineplexes and malls and all of that. Infrastructurally, yeah, we have things. Fundamentally, where are we as a country? And where are we hoping to be based on where we are right now?
Right, because as you indicated, visually, we appear to be an extremely appealing country. But, when you deep dive and look at Trinidad, you realize the dysfunctionality is on another level. I've been living in Trinidad for about over 12 years. I've lived here previously. I've spent quite half my life here, pretty much. And basically, you see how citizens continue to be oblivious to just basically every aspect of governance that impacts them. They continue to vote on the race. They continue to be loyal to these parties that have shown nothing in return. You mentioned, with being, politically aware. I was fortunate. I grew up in a very political background, and from age 7, I realized the importance of governance, watching my uncle be on the political floor in the political arena, watching and serving in the African American community and poverty stricken constituencies. And at that age, I was aware because I was in a background that basically encouraged thought, encouraged questioning, encouraged how I would think as an adult. And every day I thank my family for that. And every day somebody asks me, Michelle, you're so comfortable speaking. You're so comfortable speaking out. And our own citizens are not even speaking out. Well, we have to speak out because we are living this nightmare of inadequate governance. We are living it here. I'm here to retire, and I'm actually now thinking, is this the place I need to be for retirement? Guess why? Because is the healthcare system going to fail me, or is it going to be there for me? Is the cost of living going to continue to raise at this astronomical amount where I perhaps will not afford a nice retirement? There are many things. Is the crime going to be reduced for me to live as an elderly person comfortably? So when you say you are not political, you have to look at all of these items, all of these elements of life that do impact you, whether you want to say you are political or not.
Exactly. And you brought up an aspect earlier, us being selfish as Trinbagonians. And I wanted to start before, look to wrap up for the day. And the first thing that came to mind was that big debacle that we had last week with the doubles versus KFC. And I mean, it was never about doubles versus KFC. That's so simplistic because it was never supposed to be about one particular institution versus another. But it also was a scenario that pointed out, just a lot of it points out the selfish thinking of a lot of Trinidadians. Some things that I had to read and hear from people that doubles vendors make thousands of KFC because go home and look what your cost and stuff. And I was trying to understand, Trinidadians, how come we did not stand in solidarity with the doubles vendors? How come I didn't hear a KFC worker or a supporter or eater of KFC say, you know what should be good for one should be good for all? And we stand in solidarity with not just the doubles vendors, but any other food business that should be essential, since we were calling food essential. We stand with any other business not able to operate, even though they are trying to meet the same requirements as these bigger restaurants and bigger establishments. We stand in solidarity. And Trinbagonians, at that point, they really let me down because that was a moment for us to stand together. And we seem to stand together for all of I don't want to say the wrong things because the wrong things. I mean, the last time I heard about us jumping out ourselves was for Nicki Minaj's husband when he pushed Iowa Jordan. And I mean, the Facebook was ablaze with people, everybody wanting to ride for Kenneth Petty, and I was like, I can't believe Petroton shut down. We have no water. Crime is over 500 people a year, but this is what sparks outrage from the people. The last time we have stood together, I cannot read for something positive. A common good has been, I can't remember when. I think Anthony said
Right.
the last movie that we won. And the time for us to stand together and really show who we are as a nation, because that division that governments and leaders continue to exploit is what continues us back. We spent an entire weekend arguing about doubles versus KFC, roti versus chicken, Indian versus African. And that is what we did, rather than all of us come together at that point and say, whether KFC or Royal Castle or doubles vendors open or not, politicians still eating nice, They still have a work, They still doing okay, Why can't we, and why is it so hard for us to stand together? And that concept of the progressive empowerment of one people under one flag, our slogan, our motto, our tagline, it is one of the things that drew me to the party, because when you look at the makeup, the composition of the members of the Progressive Empowerment Parties, people from is the spectrum of the rainbow, all different races. You can't say that this party is more of anything or more of one race over the other, because it's a group of people who understand that we as Trinbagonians, no matter our hair texture, no matter what skin color, no matter who we pray to, no matter who we sleep with, no matter who we know, that we all are in the same boat. And like current tide lifts all boats, if the most affluent in our society care about the needs of the poorest in society and can see and understand that together we aspire, together we achieve. And that came in there at the perfect moment, but it's something that we forget a lot of times, and we so focus on fighting each other that we don't focus that attention where it is needed. We don't focus that attention on the people who are responsible for having us here. And people, I will forever say it, we speak unity a lot in this nation, and we talk about in this coronavirus, let's stand together, but the moments and the opportunities to prove that we really standing together, we don't, and we have to do better as people. We have to want better for ourselves as citizens, and then we also have to want better for our neighbor, our community. A nation is a collection of communities. All of these phrases that we use in the Progressive Empowerment Party that coming back to me right now, but are so very pertinent to everything
Yes.
that we discuss our brothers because we're in the same boat. We are in the same boat.
Exactly, and I use this terminology. We are savagely racially divided in this country, where we just continue to make every issue race concerning race. We saw the prime minister of this country come out and say that the doubles KFC issue was a racist issue, basically. Why do we continue to relate race to everything and the dysfunctionality that continues in this country? It's almost as though we're just denying ourselves the better governance that we deserve as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We need to wake up. We need to see, as we are discussing this morning, we can see how everything is related. We started with education, but it goes to the social development system, knowing what citizens, what students are suffering, knowing what's going on in the homes of this country, knowing that poverty is a much bigger issue than we thought and we want to admit. I have keep saying this, and I've been saying this for a few years now. I have never seen poverty at the level it is now in Trinidad and Tobago. I remember being a child here, and I'm thinking it is nothing but wealth. I remember my friends saying Trinidad is so wealthy. Again, growing up, being here all the time. And now I can see poverty. I know people that cannot buy shoes for their children to go to school. The same system that's supposed to start back in September, that cannot afford books. We need to start thinking collectively, citizens, as a country, and stop dividing ourselves by this race issue, and realize right now with COVID-19 and with all issues, we all are being impacted.
Definitely. And if it's any for us to stand together and not the stand together that people were talking about at the beginning of COVID-19, which meant take everything that the government tell you as face value and don't question anything. That's not standing together, and that's not unity. That is being absolutely irresponsible with your politics and your government. And I'm not saying that we do support and applaud initiatives, because there are some initiatives that the government copy and pasted that very much would and will beneficial to the society. But then when you ask the right questions, such as, yes, we're giving grants, but how are we going to disperse them? How are the cost of living? These are things that we ask, and together we need to be asking these questions. So don't confuse don't confuse asking for accountability and transparency and asking the right questions of your government as being disloyal or not having national pride. Actually, having national pride is considering the needs of the entire society. It doesn't mean sitting down in silence and just allowing decisions to be made without questioning it. Because if we had done that with the security contract that the Minister of National Security wanted to implement, if we had done that then, today we would have been paying $87,000 each for each patrol to four separate security companies. So if there's a time to understand the power of your voice, it is now. The government is paying attention, they're listening. People are paying attention and they're listening. Right now, food security, food independence is a huge topic as the world is, anticipating and bracing for what may be a dip in the distribution of food globe. Right here, right now in Trinidad and Tobago, we only now beginning to have the discussion on food independence, a discussion that we should have had 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. We have the time that it is going to be most critical. Michelle, any closing comments from you?
No, I just hope that, our conversation continues to enlighten the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and that we do see that we deserve better governance. And it's not about, as Felicia indicated, saying something. It's about how are we going to do it, and being held accountable as a government, as a country. We have clearly seen with the COVID-19, it has clearly drawn a line of the haves and the have-nots in this country, and it is unfortunate that we have a great percentage of citizens living day to day and are currently on the breadline and are literally facing hunger. during this pandemic. And I do hope the government is listening to assist in expediting these grants to the citizens that need this, and that we as citizens have to start to think and question those in power.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you very much for joining me. Your presence, your contribution, as always, is and was enlightening. Thank you for joining us earlier in the program. And all of our viewers, thank you again for sticking with us from 8 to 10, as we are on every morning, 8 to 10. We will be back tomorrow, joined by some members of our PEP overseas team. We're going to be talking a little bit more about education in light of all that is going to happen here locally, with our SCA being deferred to possibly September, October, in what will now be a revised school year. So, Trinidad and Tobago, please be safe, stay home, and remember, stay together by staying apart.